bleed. So Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice tells a story of Gotham's Caped Crusader taking on Superman while a new threat looms in the background. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the final review in my Batman review series. Would have liked to have gotten this one done before I saw the Batman, but that's how time allowed. So if you are joining me for the first time, I have reviewed every single live-action Batman film with the exception of the 1966 Adam West film. I don't think I would have anything good to say about it. They are all in a playlist. I will put that link up here in the video here just in a couple of minutes. And I have also done a full review of the new film, The Batman. I'm going to be doing a spoiler review this weekend, and I have a whole handful of rankings coming out. So if you are a fan of Batman, of the Gotham universe, definitely hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything coming out in the next couple of weeks. Now, Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition is what I'm going to be talking about here. This is kind of the director's cut, but honestly it's just the definitive edition of the film. It's the film that should have been released to theaters. This is a movie that was intended to be 3 hours long, it was shot to be 3 hours long, it was edited to be 3 hours long, and then the studio got cold feet, decided to hack off 30 minutes of the runtime, chopped it all together and threw it out in theaters to try to make more screenings happen to get more money. And the reception of the theatrical edition is the direct result of that. This is a movie that came out that was divisive at best. Most critics did not like it. Quite a few of the fans did not like it. Even those of us that loved Man of Steel and really do like Zack Snyder's movies had some significant problems with the way that the story flowed. Now, once it came out on video and we got to watch what the movie was supposed to be with that 30 minutes added back into it, it's not necessarily a completely different movie, but my God, the difference that 30 minutes makes. The 2.5 hour cut felt like 4 hours. The 3 hour cut feels like 2 hours because everything flows better. Everything was fleshed out better. Everything made more sense. There was plot lines that was completely ripped from the theatrical cut that just made certain things in that movie make no sense. And while there are still genuine problems that I have with this movie that no cut of this film will fix, the Ultimate Edition is a significant improvement over the theatrical. So if you have not watched the Ultimate Edition, if you had issues with the theatrical cut, I implore you to check that out. That's the only cut of this movie that I acknowledge, and that is the cut of the movie that I'm going to be talking about today. So after Man of Steel came out, it was a pretty big success. It wasn't like this monumental success. I don't think it made nearly as much as they thought it was going to, but WB wanted to fast track. They wanted to get caught up with the MCU. They wanted to build out this universe, start the ball just running, hit the ground running, and don't take any time to really start developing all these things. And so they more or less mandated Zack Snyder to include Batman in his Man of Steel sequel. So what was going to be Man of Steel 2 became Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. And that was kind of the beginning of the problems of this movie. Because while there are some of us, myself included, that thinks that Man of Steel is one of the greatest comic book movies of all time, and certainly possibly the most underrated, underappreciated comic book film of all time, it was a divisive film. It wasn't the take on Superman that we were used to seeing. This was a far departure from the Christopher Reeve Superman. And so they really did need a second film to kind of develop this out a little bit more, to introduce us to this new age version, this Zack Snyder version of Clark Kent. But they didn't really have the time to do that. So in this movie, they have to introduce Batman, they have to continue the story of Man of Steel, they have to introduce Lex Luthor, they have to introduce Wonder Woman, they have to set up things for the Justice League movie, they have to have Batman and Superman fight, they have to have the death of Superman. I mean, there's like 4 movies easy of plot development, character development, and story arcs that was crammed into one movie. Now, I do think that Zack Snyder actually pulls off doing that task within one movie much better than most directors could, but there are certain decisions, certain creative choices in here that I think held it back from being a knockout punch. And this was kind of the beginning of the downfall of the DCEU for a long time, paired with the horrible reception of Suicide Squad, paired with the disastrous situation with the Justice League movie, and it's pretty much no question why this thing kind of rebooted itself. Despite how much I love Zack Snyder's films, despite how much of a dedicated fan base that he has, him and WB were just like fire and oil. These two just did not mix for whatever reason. But now talking specifically about Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, Starting off with the positives for this movie, I really do love the ambition here. I think that this is a film that shoots for the stars, doesn't quite reach them, but I will always take ambition that doesn't quite get there over a perfectly executed, safe movie. And this is a film that, you know, it should have never had the weight on its shoulders that it did with all of these things that he needed to set up and execute in one movie. But with that Herculean task in mind, I think that there is a lot of very ambitious things that he does in here with the version of Batman that we get introduced to, a very dark, brutal, almost non-human version of Batman, which is very different than what fans have come to know. Even with Superman, him carrying on the story from the first film and not really knowing his place in here, introducing a wildly different interpretation of Lex Luthor, including the greater DC universe with Wonder Woman being in here and hints of things to come with this little scene that introduces Flash, Aquaman, Cyborg, setting up the threat of Justice League. There were so many things that this movie sought out to do that some of the things it did, it knocked out of the fucking park. And others, I don't even really think it was the ambition that held them back. It was just creative choices like with Lex Luthor. But this is a film that whether you love it or hate it, you have to admire the fact that this is way, way, way more of a large-scale picture than most comic book films even attempt to do nowadays. And like I've already said, I am a fan of Zack Snyder. Pretty much all of his movies, with the exception of maybe Sucker Punch and the Owl movie, I am a fan of. I like his style. He's very visual with his storytelling. Sometimes people can accuse him of style over substance, but I think he has a very mythic approach to the DC universe, to these heroes, to where they're like gods among men. They're not really like superheroes. They're just like these demigods that are within all of us, that are among all of us. And he takes that and he kind of gives us this movie through that lens. And it's just a very unique vision for these characters and for this universe. And there are scenes here that are just literally comic book pages brought to life on screen. Like the Batman v Superman fight, there's a moment where he grabs onto the building when the lightning strikes behind him that's right out of The Dark Knight Returns. There's other shots that you could just frame and they can almost just be a wallpaper or an art piece in your house because they just look so gorgeous. Whether or not you like his storytelling or not, I mean, the guy just knows how to strike his audience visually. And this guy can film some fucking action sequences. To this day, I still think the Batman warehouse fight is possibly the greatest fight scene in any comic book movie ever. And that's after seeing the new Batman film, which I just gave a 5 out of 5 to. So keep that in mind. That action sequence right there, if that was the only action sequence in this movie, I would still be like, holy fuck, this movie is awesome for that alone. But there's the Batman v Superman fight, there's some great stuff with the Batmobile, there's the fight with Doomsday at the end, there's some stuff with Wonder Woman getting brought into here, which was our introduction to Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, one of the more well-received castings of this universe. So many action sequences and heightened sequences in this movie that are just a blast to watch amongst all of this deep, dark drama that is going on in the background. I am an absolute sucker for Ben Affleck's take on Batman. I loved that casting when I first heard it. Ben Affleck was never a guy that I particularly cared for until I started watching the movies that he himself directed, and then I just became an instant fan. And once he kind of course-corrected his career around the time he did Gone Baby Gone in The Town, every single role that he was taking, I just loved him in. And so his very brooding, dark, brutal, just bone-breaking take on Batman, to where he has lost all faith and he is just there to fuck up criminals left and right. I love it. I love that whole take on it. I think physically, he's by far the most imposing Batman that we have gotten. I think that he does a really good job at doing both the Bruce Wayne and the Batman side of the personality, to where Batman is very much who he is. That is the character. That is Bruce Wayne. He is now Batman. Bruce Wayne is his alter ego. That is the mask. And he's one of the only actors that have really captured that in my mind. Christian Bale did pretty good, but I think Ben Affleck, even with the short amount of time that we got him, captures it a little bit better, to where Batman is him. And then whenever he gets Bruce Wayne, you can just tell the entire thing is just an act. It's a play. It's a mask to look normal to everybody else, when he is very much not normal on the inside. And I've said this numerous times on this channel. I know it's not a popular take, but Henry Cavill is one of my favorite takes on a superhero ever, and he is the reason why I started to become a Superman fan. All the way back to my childhood, I never really liked the character. I always thought that he was a little ridiculous. I always thought he had way too many powers. I was like, this fucking guy's like a walking utility belt. He's got freezing powers, wind powers, flying, strength. There's nothing that could take this guy down except them stupid ass green rocks. That's dumb. I always just never really gravitated towards the character. Still have not really gravitated towards the Christopher Reeve take. It's just a little too goofy and campy for me. So this very real world and a little bit more grounded take on Superman, I have always loved. I adore Man of Steel. And so that carries over into this film where you get to see Henry Cavill's Superman after he has made the decision to completely wipe out any potential of Krypton coming back, to choose Earth, to choose Lois Lane, to choose humanity. Now he's dealing with the consequences of that. Dealing with the consequences of making a good decision. Learning that no matter what he does, there's going to be people that love him and people that hate him. No matter how much good he does, no matter how many people he saves, no matter how much he is the best Superman that he can possibly be, there is never going to be a moment where he can relax and think, the world loves me, the world thanks me for what I have done. And that's something that's a really interesting thing to explore with this character that I don't think we've ever really explored before. And it's something that, especially in today's society, is very relevant. There's not a single person that no matter what they do is going to have fans, and that's it. I mean, I don't care what I do on here. In a much smaller scale example, I don't care how many movies I praise or how many movies I give realistic takes on. There's always going to be people that really respect what I say and understand where I'm coming from, even if they don't agree with me. And there's going to be people that want me to just spontaneously explode on camera because I said something that they don't like. So it's just something that is relevant. It's something that's very realistic. If we had a Superman, that's exactly how it would be. One news channel would praise him, one news channel would call him a devil. And I like the fact that they explore that here. And they explore it in very extreme ways where you got Batman that sees this alien, and there's even a line of dialogue where he's like, if there's even 1% chance that he could turn on us, I have to take it like it's 100%, and I have to go fuck this guy up. And so you have that, you have Lex Luthor that is a little bit more of the espionage, like behind the scenes suit that is putting the chess pieces in place and not ever having to throw a punch, but just manipulating the scene, manipulating the public eye, manipulating the public reception of Superman, which again, very socially relevant, very relevant to today. And so the whole exploration of why Batman wants to take on Superman, why Superman has his doubts about this Bat of Gotham, what brings them to blows, what eventually makes them reconcile that and take on the bigger, more important threat, I think as a whole, the core of that story is very good and very effective. Moving on to the mixed aspects of Batman v Superman, and I've kind of already talked about it a bit, but with ambition that doesn't quite reach the stars, you have a lot of things that feel like they just should not have been in this movie. And I appreciate the fact that they were trying to do so much, that they were trying to set up Gotham, explore more of Metropolis, also set up the greater DC universe and all of that, but there are so many things in this movie that, despite feeling like the extra 30 minutes in the Ultimate Edition really does improve the film, I think that there's still at least 15 or 20 minutes of the overall plot that they could probably have trimmed from the initial script and made this a tighter, more coherent movie overall. So I appreciate the fact that they like to do all these things, that they shot for the stars, but at the same time, you didn't reach the stars, gonna have to call out why it didn't reach the stars. The actual fight between Batman and Superman, it's something that I appreciate more every single time that I watch it, but I still feel like it's not as epic as it should be. When you think Batman and Superman are finally going to fight on screen, that concept alone just has so many promises and so many expectations that are built into the core audience that you better deliver the most epic fight scene of all time, or damn near try. And it's something that I feel like it's ripped right out of Dark Knight Returns. So you have the mech suit, you have all these different gadgets and weapons and devices that are made out of kryptonite. And so it's more of a mental fight. It's more of a strategic fight than it is like a blow for blow beatdown. And so I always felt like the fact that the best action sequence in this movie is not the Batman and Superman fight, It's a bit of a problem with that. It's still a cool sequence. It's still something that is very much translated directly from the comics and looks quite literally like comic book pages brought to life. So I enjoy the scene much more than I did when I first saw it, but I still can't help but feel like there was just an epic version of this that could have just almost redefined comic book fights forever, like the runway sequence in Captain America Civil War. This should have been on the level of something like that. And for the last mixed aspect, I'm always torn on the introduction and the inclusion of Wonder Woman. I think she's utilized pretty well in the film, and of course I love Gal Gadot in the role. And so that side of it I like, but it's just one of those elements that I feel like was padding out this movie when it really should have had more time and more room to kind of stretch their legs and focus on just Batman and Superman. I don't think we ever needed Wonder Woman in this movie.
She with you?
I thought she was with you.
Now moving on to the negatives, and the main one for me is and always will be Jesse Eisenberg's version of Lex Luthor. Now, I think that he does a really good job at delivering the type of Lex Luthor that they were going for. I don't think it was his weird idea to do this. I think that was specifically what they were trying to do with this new iteration. I just don't like that new iteration.
Boys, Bruce Wayne meets Clark Kent. I love it. I love bringing people together. How are we?
Lex?
Hi, hello, Lex. It is a pleasure. Ow, wow, that is a good grip. You should not pick a fight with this person.
When I think of Lex Luthor, I think of somebody who's calm, who's calculated, who's manipulative, who's evil as fuck, but isn't like this crazy, almost like Jim Carrey Riddler version of the character where he's like neurotic and he's shoving Jolly Ranchers in motherfuckers' mouths and he's always like, and like correcting himself and stopping and even giving speeches to a crowd and just acting weird and has these little tics and everything, and it just, maybe if he had gotten to do a couple more movies, they were building to that version of Lex Luthor that was not so nuts. But for this movie, for the introduction of the character, I just don't understand why we went there. Even if you're doing a young, like Mark Zuckerberg version of Lex Luthor, or if this is supposed to be Lex Luthor's son, that was also kind of a rumor type thing on there. I get all of that, that's fine, but this is just such a huge departure personality-wise from what fans expect from the character, and I just don't think this new iteration works. I don't think that it adds anything to the character. I certainly don't think it adds anything to the movie. I think it actually takes quite a bit away. There is also a lot of logic issues in this movie. If I did like a commentary, I could go through and pick out every single one, but like for example, the opening scene, which is a fucking amazing opening scene. It's a great introduction to Bruce Wayne where he's running through the city in his little fucking SUV and he's hightailing it towards the destruction while everybody else is running away. I mean, that moment is awesome. But why the fuck was his company still doing shit with documents and faxing things while this fight is going on? Like, why are they still there? It's to the point where, like, when Bruce Wayne calls the guy and he answers him and he's still upstairs, like, faxing shit, it's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing up there? Get the hell out of Metropolis. They also never give any context to how Lex Luthor was able to figure out that Bruce Wayne was Batman. Kind of an important plot detail. Now, I'm somebody that doesn't always have to have explanations spoon-fed to me. If they just hint at it or give a little bit of a direction of where things might have come from, I can put two and two together, but they don't give any explanation. He just knows. He knows who Bruce Wayne is, and then obviously he knows who Superman and Clark Kent are, which is another thing that he just figured out, and he uses that information to pit them against each other. Pretty integral piece to his plot that is just non-existent in the movie. And there is a sequence in the third act that has bugged the fuck out of me every single time I watch this movie, involving the Doomsday fight, Lois Lane, and that fucking kryptonite spear. Watch this whole third act again and you will never be able to watch it the same. Swear to God. She picks up and does something with that spear like 17 times in this scene over and over. That's her entire plot development for the last 45 minutes of this movie is just do shit with that spear. Like the spear gets dropped from the fight and she realizes it can hurt Superman, so she takes it and she runs into this building and she throws it in this water, then walks back out of the building and chills while she watches them fight Doomsday. Then she realizes, oh, they could probably use that spear to kill Doomsday. So she runs back into the building, dives into the water to get the spear. The rubble comes down on top of her. Now she's in trouble and Superman has to leave this fucking fight to go save her. saves her. She comes up, he's gasping for air and shit. She takes the spear again and throws it away from him. It's like, what the fuck? Figure out what you're doing with the damn spear and commit. And including the whole doomsday fight in the conversation, I don't think we needed the death of Superman in this movie. We're fucking 2 movies in. Like, did they develop that and use that in a good way eventually in Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League? Yes. So maybe the ends justify the means here. But going along with that whole narrative of we gotta rush, we gotta put everything into this movie, we gotta skip like 19 chapters because I wanna get caught up and I wanna do Justice League now. That's one of the casualties, is you have Doomsday, the death of Superman fight, that whole storyline tacked onto the end of this movie and fast forwarded through to the point where I just don't feel like that was the necessary third act for this movie. Of course, Batman and Superman need to collectively come together at the end and go after a bigger threat. That was Lex Luthor. I don't think he needed a giant spiny monster to make that be an effective scene. That was just something to get all 3 of these gods together, of which really only 2 of them can do shit. Batman's just kind of in the background like, you guys got this? And finally, let's talk about the Martha scene. Because the Martha scene tends to be the biggest thing that people pull out when they want to shit on this movie. And I'm certainly not a fan of it, but I also think that's one isolated moment in a 3-hour movie. Let's calm a little bit. This scene on paper, the whole idea and the revelation in the writer's room that both Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent share a mother with the name Martha. The fact that they could use that to tap into whatever humanity is left inside of Batman and make him realize at the final moment that he is about to murder somebody with a mother, he has humanity, holy shit, and just all of this internal turmoil in his head. The idea on paper is brilliant. The idea on paper is perfect for the end of the fight. The execution, however, is very silly. The way that Henry Cavill delivers the line, "Martha, shave Martha," and Batman, "Why'd you say that name?
Stop!
Why did you say that name?"
It's his mother's name!
Did we just become best friends? Yep!
It should have been done much better. It should have been done differently. But that scene has always turned into a meme because the execution is just so wonky. But I will hold true that the idea that they were going for could have been perfect. Could have been brilliant. In conclusion, guys, I am a fan of this movie. I still feel like it should have been much better than it was, even with the Ultimate Edition being much better than the theatrical cut, but for what it is, for the plan that they had in place for Man of Steel, BVS, and then Zack Snyder's Justice League to be this big epic trilogy, I've always liked the movie, but I certainly like it more in retrospect after seeing Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's always a little bittersweet because, of course, we're not going to see this continued. Zack Snyder will never come back to WB. Ben Affleck's gone. Henry Cavill, they don't know what the fuck to do with him, which just pisses me off every single time I think about it. But as an isolated movie, for what it is, I actually think it's much better than a lot of people give it credit for. It's not the type of movie that's going to be everybody's cup of tea. This is not a crowd pleaser. This is not a huge mass appeal popcorn flick, but it is a very dramatic, epic, ambitious take on Batman and Superman going after each other, and I will always appreciate it for what it is, not necessarily what it could have been. So if you have always wanted to see Batman and Superman go blow for blow on the big screen, this might not be the movie you pictured it being, but it's certainly a movie that has a lot more merit than you would expect. So add it to your collection and go out and buy it. So what do you guys think of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice? Have you seen the Ultimate Edition? Please see the Ultimate Edition before chiming in, because that theatrical cut, don't even acknowledge that stupid fucking thing. But if you've seen it, let me know your thoughts down below. Have your thoughts changed on this movie over time, one way or another? Have they changed since seeing Zack Snyder's Justice League and getting an idea of where things were supposed to be heading with this movie? Please let me know all your thoughts and we will talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button. Like I said, a lot more Batman content coming your way, and there's a lot of Batman content from the past week and even a couple of reviews that are a few years old that you can check out if you're a fan of the character. So thank you for watching as always, and remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean that you have to be.